Hey guys, my name is Mujahid, and this is the fourth episode of A Beginner's Guide to C++. In today's video, we are going to talk about object-oriented programming. First of all, what is object-oriented programming? OOP is a computer programming model that organizes software designed around data or objects rather than functions and logic. What this initially means is it's more like a system which we use to organize and manipulate data a lot better. We declare classes and objects to organize our code better. We can define objects as data fields that have unique attributes and behavior to them, kind of like a structure that holds data. The interaction between classes and objects is that class is more of a blueprint for the object. So you create the class and you create the object off of the class. And the attributes and methods of the objects will be based off of what class has. By the way, attributes are basically variables and methods are basically functions under a class. So keep that in mind because I'll be using those words quite often. When you create an object under that class, that object will be carrying those attributes and methods in itself. I know it looks like I'm just reading stuff right now. I apologize, but once we get to coding, it's gonna make much more sense. For now, I'm just trying to explain the concept of what classes and objects are. And when it comes to that subject, I think biology is a great way to explain things because it is organized and systemized so well. In here, I have a little chart. It shows you warm-blooded animals, and here we have mammals and birds. In a chart like this, warm-blooded animals would be a class, and mammals and birds would be subclasses under them. What this means is mammals and birds share similarities, and those similarities are under the name of being warm-blooded. By looking at this chart, we can see that tigers, bats, and deers are warm-blooded mammals, and they all share those similarities. They are all mammals. For example, they all have fur or they give birth. And in the other side, we have eagles and ostriches, and both of these are warm-blooded birds, and they also share similarities, such as laying eggs or having feathers. All of this is to organize things better based on when it comes to creating classes, you can create them inside of the main function, but as we mentioned in a previous video, filling inside of main function is not really a good idea because it reduces the readability and makes the code harder to understand. So it's preferred to do it outside of main. Classes can have different components, and those components can have different levels of accessibility. What do I mean by this is some of the components are accessible from anywhere and everywhere of the function. What this means is when you create an object under that class, some of the attributes of that object are accessible from anywhere of the code. You can go inside of any line and you can manipulate the data around them. Some of those attributes can only be accessed through class, so you would need special functions to not only manipulate them and define them new values, but also to be able to see them. You can't even go and view them inside of the code. The way we decide which attributes and methods can be achievable from anywhere or nowhere is through the usage of public, private, and protected. There is more of these, but I'm only going to mention these three. The attributes and methods you write under the public part of the class can be accessed from anywhere of the code. You can manipulate the data, you can view them inside of your main function. And you usually use this for data that isn't that important and wouldn't cause so many problems if it was changed. The attributes you write under private are a lot more special. Attributes of those objects can only be manipulated inside of that class. You would need special functions to not only be able to manipulate them, but also to be able to see them. You'd use something like this if the data is too important. For example, you wouldn't want your password to be accessible from anywhere. You would want it to be as hard to access as possible. And the attributes you write under protected are kind of awkward compared to the others. Components under protected are really similar to private. The only difference is that if you were to create a subclass, those attributes would also be achievable if they were under protected. Once again, it's all gonna make sense once we get to coding. The way you create classes is kind of like this. You follow a similar format. You type class as if class itself is a variable type and name your class. After that, you go in between beautiful parentheses. And if you want your attributes to be accessible from anywhere, you type it under public, kind of like this. After going with public, you type the variable type of your attributes, and this is how you basically do it. Now, every object created under this class will have attribute 1 and attribute 2. and those can be accessed through anywhere because they were written under public. And here's how you create objects. First, you type your class's name and then you name your object. It is really similar to declaring a variable. You can think of it as your object is your variable and that variable's type is your class. The way you access to the attributes of the object created is something like this. You type the object's name and you go with a dot, then you type the name of the attribute. And now you can use the attribute of that object just like a variable. You can use it in a cout to view it, you can give it different values, and do whatever you do with variables. Let's get to Visual Studio Code and create a class. First we type class, then we name our class. Let's go with something like car, and between beautiful parentheses, we want the attributes to be accessible, so I'm just gonna go public, give it a column, and under public, whatever I write is going to be accessible through anywhere. Let's go with something like string model and integer dates. Now, if I go inside of the main function and type car as if this is a type of variable and create an object named car, let's name the object something like this. So we know that it's an object. Now I can use this format to access the model of the car. Let's make it a BMW. Right now we have an object that is named like this and its model is BMW because I've just defined it. Let's also give it a date. It is just like declaring variables. And now I can use the date and the model of car just like variables. And if I run the code, I can see that the model of the car is a BMW and the date of it is 1999. Alright, so let's also give our class a method, and to do that, we just declare a function inside of the class, something like this. And to call the function for the object, I just go with something like this. When I run the code, we can see that the function was called and executed correctly. Alright guys, here's the conclusion of the video. That's it for today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.